Sometimes in life we look up and say, God, are you even listening? We plan everything so perfectly, the job, the relationship, the dream, and yet life suddenly throws a plot twist that makes absolutely no sense. You pray, you cry, you try, and silence. Total silence. It's like calling customer service and the line just keeps saying, please hold. Your call is important to us. But what if that silence isn't rejection? What if it's preparation? What if the delay is not denial but divine direction? My friends, I've come to realize something so beautiful. God's moves are not always visible, but they're always meaningful. Sometimes, He's rearranging the stage behind the curtain before your grand entry. And when the curtain finally opens, His next move will leave you speechless. Because the truth is, when you think God is doing nothing, He's doing everything. The problem is, we're so focused on the pain of the process that we miss the power of the purpose. So tonight, I want to take you through a few reflections, a few stories, a few lessons that remind us that even when life doesn't go according to our plan, it's still going exactly according to His. When life suddenly becomes quiet, painfully quiet, we start to wonder if God has gone silent on us. You wake up one morning, and that enthusiasm you once had to pray, to plan, to move forward just feels absent. You check your phone, no new messages. You wait for a call that doesn't come. You open your heart to God, and it feels like He's on mute. Have you ever had that feeling? When the silence feels louder than any storm you've faced before. But here is the truth I've learned through my own journey and through watching so many others walk theirs. When God is silent, He's not ignoring you. He's speaking through stillness. He's preparing you to hear something deeper, something that words cannot explain. Imagine this. A farmer plants a seed in the soil. For weeks he sees nothing. He waters it, protects it, looks at it every morning, but there's no visible growth. If he were impatient, he'd think the seed's dead, but in reality that seed is busy, silently splitting, sprouting, reaching down into the earth to find stability before it ever dares to reach upward. The silence of the soil is not the absence of growth, it's the foundation of it. That's exactly how God works. His silence is not abandonment, it's alignment. He's working in the unseen, nurturing something within you that words could never build. In our human world, silence often means disinterest. When a friend doesn't reply, we assume they don't care. When someone gives us the silent treatment, we take it as rejection. But with God, silence means something entirely different. Silence is His sacred language of transformation. He doesn't always answer immediately, because His goal is not to impress you, it's to strengthen you. Think about this. If every prayer you ever said was answered instantly, would you grow in patience? If every desire came true the moment you wished for it, would you ever learn faith? God's silence teaches us what His words cannot. It teaches us trust. I remember speaking to a young man once who had gone through months of depression after losing his job. He said, I prayed every night, but God didn't say anything. Not a sign, not a whisper. I felt like He had forgotten me. I smiled and said, what if that silence wasn't God ignoring you, but God inviting you? He looked confused. I told him, sometimes God invites us into a space of stillness so we can finally hear what the noise of our life has been drowning out. Maybe He wasn't giving you an answer because He wanted you to stop chasing answers and start trusting the process. A few months later, that same young man found a new career that not only paid better, but gave him peace and purpose. He told me, "No, I see why God was silent. He wasn't preparing a job for me, He was preparing as me for the job." And isn't that how it often is? We cry, "Why aren't you speaking?" But if we could listen deeper, we'd realize that silence is His way of saying, "I'm still here. I'm still in control. Just because I'm quiet doesn't mean I've quit." When life seems to pause, it's because something divine is being processed. The cocoon may look like a prison to the caterpillar, but it's actually the sacred place where transformation happens. The silence of that cocoon is filled with activity, wings being formed, beauty being built. And when the time is right, the butterfly doesn't need to beg for freedom. It simply emerges. Many of us want God to shout from the heavens, to give clear signs, to speak in thunder. But God's most powerful messages are often whispered in silence. The reason? Because silence makes you pay attention. It strips away distraction. It humbles the ego. It quiets the noise of your own expectations. In silence, you stop talking, eyes at God, and start listening for Him. It's in those moments of divine quiet that you begin to sense His presence, not in the words you hear, but in the peace you feel. When you don't hear from God, don't assume He's gone. Just because He's not talking doesn't mean He's not teaching. Maybe He's teaching you to be still in a world that never stops moving. Maybe He's teaching you to stop chasing temporary answers and start trusting eternal timing. Maybe He's preparing you to recognize His voice in a new way. Because when you truly understand silence, you stop fearing it and start feeling God within it. So, the next time life feels like an unanswered prayer, pause and listen closely. Maybe God's saying, "Stay still, I'm working." Maybe He's saying, "The blessing is not late, it's just loading." Just like a sunrise doesn't rush, the divine never hurries but always arrives. Don't mistake the quiet for a void. It's a womb. Something beautiful is being born there. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that those quiet seasons weren't the moments God disappeared. They were the moments He drew closest. Because silence was never His absence, it was His whisper saying, "Trust me. I'm building something inside you that will soon leave you speechless." We all have moments when it feels like life has hit pause, don't we? You've prayed, worked hard, stayed hopeful, and yet nothing seems to move. You start to wonder, why is everything taking so long? The delay feels unbearable. You scroll through social media and see everyone else moving ahead, getting promoted, getting married, starting new things, and there you are, stuck in what feels like an endless waiting room of life. You keep asking, "God, when will it be my turn?" But what if that waiting room isn't a punishment? What if it's preparation? What if your delay is not life denying you, but God designing you? Because sometimes what we call a delay is actually divine design. Let's take a simple example. When an architect designs a building, there's a long, invisible phase before construction begins. There's no brick, no cement, no visible structure, only plans, blueprints, calculations, and adjustments. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing is happening. But in reality, that's the most important stage. If the design isn't right, the building will collapse. In the same way, when your life feels like it's not being built, God is busy perfecting your blueprint. You may not see construction, but He's adjusting your foundation. Think about a child in a mother's womb. The baby doesn't arrive the next day after conception. There are 9 months of hidden development, of silent growth. If a mother tried to rush the process, it would end in disaster. The womb's waiting period isn't a delay, it's protection. It's the perfect environment where what's meant to live can fully form. In the same way, when God asks you to wait, it's because what's coming needs full formation. If He gave it to you too soon, it could harm you instead of help you. The delay is divine. It ensures your destiny isn't premature. There's a beautiful story of a woman who once told me, "I kept asking God for a life partner for years. I thought He wasn't listening. I cried, begged, fasted, nothing. Then, after 7 years of waiting, I met someone who matched me not just in personality, but in purpose. That's when I realized, during those years of silence, God was preparing him too. If I had met him earlier, neither of us would have been ready for each other." Isn't that powerful? You see, God doesn't just prepare blessings for you, He prepares you for your blessings. In our human impatience, we want instant results. But God's clock doesn't run on our calendar. We think in minutes, He works in moments. A minute is about speed, but a moment is about significance. What seems slow to you is sacred to Him. Every delay is shaping your strength, patience, and wisdom. Every no, every not yet is part of a masterpiece you can't see yet. Sometimes, the things that take the longest are the ones that last the longest. Have you ever noticed that the most delicious meals take time to cook? Fast food fills you, but it doesn't nourish you. Similarly, quick blessings satisfy temporarily, but divine timing sustains eternally. God doesn't want to give you something fast. He wants to give you something forever. He allows delays not to make you suffer, but to make you stronger. He wants you to arrive at your destination ready to stay, not just ready to enter. In the waiting, you learn patience. In the silence, you build faith. In the delay, you discover depth. Because God doesn't want you to simply receive. He wants you to be transformed in the process. When you wait and still trust, something happens inside you. You stop trying to control and start learning surrender. You stop focusing on what's missing and start seeing what's growing. I remember a young artist who once said, "I spent years painting and no one noticed. I thought I was wasting my time. But those silent years taught me skill, humility, and discipline. And one day, the very thing I was doing unnoticed became the thing everyone celebrated." That's how divine delays work. They don't deny your dream, they deepen your roots, so that when your time comes, you can stand tall and not fall apart. When things take longer than you expected, remember that God is never late. He's exact. He doesn't deliver on your deadline. He delivers on destiny's time. You're not behind, you're being built. The delay isn't a wall, it's a womb. You are being shaped for something greater than you can currently imagine. Just like a musician tunes every string before the concert, God is tuning your heart before the symphony of your life begins. And when everything aligns, the melody will be so perfect that you'll forget the silence that came before it. So if you're in a season where nothing seems to move, don't give up. Don't assume God has forgotten you. You are not stuck, you are stationed. You are not waiting in vain. You are waiting in preparation. Every delay is a chapter in the book of your purpose. And when the final page turns, you'll see that every waiting season was a work of divine art. Trust that your timeline is sacred. You may not see progress yet, but progress is happening in the unseen. Seeds take time to grow, dreams take time to mature, and miracles take time to manifest. Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't. God's delays are not His denials. They're His designs. And when the timing is right, what once felt impossible will unfold so effortlessly that you'll realize He was never slow. He was always perfect. There are times in life when something doesn't go as planned and it breaks our heart. You prepare for an opportunity, you invest your energy in a dream, you give your love to someone, and suddenly the door shuts. You stand there, staring at that closed door, wondering, why did this happen? What did I do wrong? That's when the painful truth sets in. You've been rejected, and rejection at that moment feels like the universe is saying you're not good enough. But what if that rejection wasn't meant to destroy you? What if it was actually meant to redirect you? Sometimes God closes one path because He wants to lead you to another. You thought that door was your destiny, but God knew it was just a distraction. Imagine this. You're driving through a city and your GPS suddenly says routing. It's annoying, right? You thought you knew the best route, but the system saw something you didn't. A roadblock, an accident, a jam ahead. So it redirects you, not to punish you, but to protect you. That's how God works. When you face rejection, He's not pushing you away. He's rerouting you towards something safer, wiser, and far more beautiful than you imagined. You might not see it in that moment, but one day you look back and realize the redirection saved you from unnecessary pain. Think of a child crying because his parents won't let him touch fire. To him, it feels like rejection, his desire being denied. But to the parent, it's love, it's protection. In the same way, God sometimes withholds what we want because He knows it would burn us if we got it too soon. When a relationship falls apart, when a job application gets ignored, when your idea gets rejected, it's not always because you're wrong for it. Sometimes it's because it's wrong for you. I once spoke to a young woman who was shattered after being turned down for a position she thought was her dream job. She told me, I prayed so hard. I was sure this was meant to be. When they rejected me, I lost all confidence. I felt useless. I told her, maybe that wasn't rejection. It was redirection. Maybe that job would have kept you small. Maybe it wasn't meant to bring out your true gifts. A few months later, she was offered a position at another company where she not only earned more, but found peace and purpose. She came back and said, no, I understand. If that door had opened, I would have missed the right one. That's how God's wisdom works. He closes one chapter because the next one carries your destiny. In our pain, we see rejection as failure, but in God's plan, it's a form of redirection. He uses rejection to teach us resilience. Because if every yes came easily, we would never grow the strength to handle the weight of our blessings. You see, every no is secretly preparing you for the right yes. Every closed door is refining your patience, your character, your discernment. God doesn't just want to give you what you want. He wants to give you what will last. Think of a sculptor working on a statue. Every strike of the chisel looks destructive. Pieces fall off, the stone seems damaged, but each cut has purpose. The sculptor sees beauty where others see brokenness. Likewise, every rejection in your life is God chiseling away what's unnecessary so the masterpiece within can emerge. The people who walked away, they were part of the rough edges. The opportunities that slipped away, they were the extra stone. He's not breaking you, He's shaping you. Sometimes, rejection forces us to pause and realign. Maybe you were chasing something for the wrong reasons, validation, comparison, ego, and God says, no, not this way. It feels like loss, but it's actually liberation. Because what you lose in those moments isn't meant for your future self. God removes what distracts you, so He can make room for what defines you. That's why we must stop fighting for closed doors and Start trusting the one who knows which ones should stay shut. I've learned that the doors that stay closed are just as important as the ones that open. Not every opportunity is a blessing. Some are detours in disguise. Not every person who leaves your life is a loss. Some departures are deliverance. When God redirects you, it's because He sees the destination you can't. He's not just fixing your path, He's aligning your purpose. In life, rejection can feel like the end of your story, but in truth, it's just a plot twist. It's the chapter that introduces a better version of you. The pain of rejection pushes you to discover new strengths, new directions, and new faith. You start realizing that your worth isn't dependent on who accepts you. It's defined by who created you. So, when the door closes, don't stand there knocking endlessly in tears. Wipe your eyes, take a deep breath, and say, if this isn't for me, something better is. Because it's true, the door that closed wasn't a punishment, it was protection. The path that ended wasn't a loss, it was leading you home. You may not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and thank God for every unanswered prayer, every closed opportunity, and every person who left. You'll realize that rejection was the redirection that guided you to your purpose. You'll smile and say, "Now I see. God didn't reject me. He rescued me." And that realization will fill your heart with such peace that you'll never fear rejection again. Because now you know every no from the world is a yes from God to something far greater than you could have imagined. There are moments in life when everything we've carefully built seems to fall apart. The plans we were so sure of crumble before our eyes. The dream job doesn't work out. The relationship we invested our heart in ends, or a project we poured our soul into suddenly collapses. We look up and ask, "Why, God? I did everything right. Why did my plans break?" But what we often fail to realize is that broken plans don't mean a broken purpose. When our plans fall apart, it's not because God is cruel. It's because His plan is breaking through. What we call disruption, He calls direction. What we see as destruction, He sees as construction. Think about a potter shaping clay. When the clay resists the potter's hands, he doesn't throw it away. He simply reshapes it, presses it, and molds it again. The pressure may feel unbearable for the clay, but the potter knows exactly what he's doing. He has the design in mind, even when the clay doesn't understand. That's what happens when life breaks our plans. God's hands are at work, molding us into a form that can hold greater blessings. He's not rejecting your dream, He's refining it. There was once a young man who dreamed of becoming a musician. He auditioned for multiple shows, sent his music to record labels, and got rejected again and again. Frustrated and heartbroken, he gave up and took a job teaching kids music. Years later, one of his students uploaded a video of his song online, and it went viral overnight. What years of chasing fame couldn't do, one act of surrender accomplished. He told me once, "When my plans broke, I realized God wasn't saying no, He was saying not like that." You see, sometimes God breaks your plans because they're too small for the greatness He has in mind. When our plans fall apart, our first instinct is to question God's timing or His fairness. We cry, "This wasn't supposed to happen." But who decides what's supposed to happen? Our limited vision or His infinite wisdom? We see the next step, He sees the whole path. We plan for comfort, He plans for character. We seek success, He seeks our soul. That's why sometimes He allows the things we built to break. Because He knows if He doesn't, we'll settle for less than we were made for. There's a beautiful story about a little boy who built a sandcastle by the sea. He worked all day, proud of every tower and detail. But when the tide came in, the waves washed it all away. He cried and screamed, feeling betrayed by the ocean. His father gently placed his hand on the boy's shoulder and said, "Son, the sea didn't destroy your castle. It reminded you that you're meant to build something more lasting." That's what God does with our lives. He lets temporary things wash away so that we learn to build on eternal foundations. Maybe you thought that person was the one, but they left. Maybe you were certain that job was your lifelong career, but it ended abruptly. Maybe your dream took a turn you never expected. It hurts, no doubt, but behind the pain lies purpose. Sometimes God breaks your plan because He knows it would break you if it continued. He allows loss not to punish, but to protect. That heartbreak that left you shattered might have saved you from a life misaligned with your destiny. We often think success is when everything goes according to our plan. But true success is when we can trust God even when it doesn't. Because broken plans don't mean a broken life, they mean you're being redirected to a better version of it. Think of Joseph from ancient times, sold by his brothers, betrayed, imprisoned. Every plan he made seemed to fail. Yet every failure was a step toward his purpose. The pit led to the palace. The pain became preparation. What looked like tragedy was actually transformation. When life breaks your plans, it's easy to lose faith, but faith is built in these very moments. Faith doesn't say, "I understand what you're doing, God." Faith says, "Even though I don't understand, I trust you're doing something good." Because the truth is, we often need our plans to break so that our dependence shifts from ourselves to God. When everything we relied on fails, we realize the only foundation that doesn't crumble is Him. Sometimes, God lets your dreams collapse because He wants to give you something you didn't even know you needed. Peace, maturity, perspective, wisdom. What breaks you today may bless you tomorrow. What feels like loss now will one day make you say, "Thank God that didn't work out." You'll see that what fell apart was actually falling into place. So when your plans fall apart, don't lose hope. Take a deep breath and remind yourself that you're being rewritten by grace. Maybe you lost something, but you haven't lost God. And as long as you have Him, you haven't lost your direction. What's breaking now is not the end, it's the beginning of something divinely designed. One day, you'll look back and realize that those broken plans were the very moments that built your faith, humbled your pride, and revealed your strength. You'll see that God wasn't silent. He was strategic. He wasn't denying you. He was delivering you. And in that moment, you'll smile through tears and whisper, "Now I understand. The breaking wasn't my ending. It was my becoming." There comes a time in every person's life when the calm waters suddenly turn into storms. One moment you're sailing peacefully, everything seems under control, and the next, waves crash, the winds roar, and your little boat of certainty begins to shake. You start to panic. You pray for the storm to end, but it keeps growing stronger, and you begin to wonder, why is this happening to me? Why now? But here's the truth most of us don't realize until much later. Sometimes the storm is not sent to destroy you, it's sent to direct you. What you see as chaos, God sees as course correction. The storm isn't meant to drown you, it's meant to teach you how to walk on water. Every storm in your life carries a message, though we rarely see it in the moment. We often cry for calm, but if we listen closely, storms are God's way of steering us towards strength. Take the story of a sailor at sea. If the winds were always gentle, he'd never learn to adjust his sails. It's the rough winds that make him skilled, balanced, and alert. Likewise, the storms of life sharpen our faith and awaken our courage. Without challenges, we remain comfortable. Without discomfort, we remain unchanged. There's a young woman I once met who was deeply heartbroken after being laid off from a job she loved. She told me, "I prayed for stability, not struggle. Why did God let this happen?" Months later, during that painful storm of unemployment, she began pursuing a long forgotten passion: baking. What started as a small kitchen project grew into a business that changed her life completely. She looked back and said, "If I hadn't lost that job, I would never have discovered my true calling." That's how storms work. They seem like disasters in the moment, but they often carry divine direction in disguise. Sometimes the storm doesn't destroy your life, it destroys your illusion of control. We like to believe we're in charge, but storms remind us that there's a higher power guiding everything. When life is calm, we often forget to pray, but when the waves rise, prayer becomes our instinct. In those moments of fear and surrender, we reconnect with the source we had drifted away from. The storm forces us to let go of the wheel and trust that God knows how to steer. Have you noticed how the sky looks after a storm? The air is clearer, the colors brighter, and the world seems freshly washed. That's how it works with our souls too. After life's storms, something inside us becomes purer. The pain humbles us, the loss teaches us, the fear strengthens us. When everything settles, we emerge wiser and more grateful. The storm didn't destroy us, it cleansed us. It stripped away the unnecessary and revealed what truly matters. We often pray for smooth journeys, but God knows that still waters never made strong sailors. It's through turbulence that we learn balance. It's through hardship that we discover faith. You can't develop courage in comfort zones. You can't build endurance when everything is easy. Growth demands storms. And if you look at your past, you'll realize that your strongest moments were born out of your hardest seasons. Think of a seedling. When heavy rain falls, it bends low under the pressure of the drops. For a while, it looks like it might break. But that same rain nourishes its roots, and when the sun returns, it stands taller than before. The storm that seemed like it would destroy it actually helped it grow deeper. That's how God designs your challenges. He allows storms not to break your spirit, but to deepen your roots in faith. Sometimes, when everything feels chaotic, we only see what's being taken away, not what's being revealed. But God's perspective is different. He sees what's ahead. You might be crying over what's falling apart, while He's rejoicing over what's being built. Every gust of wind is pushing you toward your destiny, even when you can't see where it's leading. The storm isn't random. It's rerouting you to where you truly belong. There was a fisherman who once told me something profound. He said, "When the sea is rough, I don't curse the waves. I adjust my nets." That's faith. It's not about begging the storm to stop. It's about learning to move with it. Sometimes God doesn't calm the storm because He wants to calm you first. He's more interested in changing your heart than changing your weather. Because once you find peace within, even the wildest storms lose their power over you. So, when life feels like it's spiraling out of control, remember this: the storm is temporary, but the lessons it leaves are permanent. You may not understand why it's happening now, but someday you'll look back and see how it shaped your soul. You'll see how it redirected your path, built your character, and brought you closer to God. If you're going through a storm right now, don't run from it. Stand firm, even if your knees are trembling. Because every storm eventually passes, and when it does, you'll realize you didn't just survive, you evolved. The storm wasn't there to punish you, it was there to prepare you. And when you finally step out of it, when the sky is clear and the sun shines again, you look back at the waves that once terrified you and whisper with gratitude, "That storm didn't break me, it built me." It didn't end my story, it began a new one. Because sometimes, what feels like the hardest chapter of your life is just the part of the story where the hero learns to rise. And that hero, my friend, is you. Sometimes what looks like an ending is actually God's quiet preparation for a beginning so powerful, it will rewrite the very story you thought was over. Life has a strange way of closing doors that we desperately wanted open, and often we misinterpret that silence as God's absence. But the truth is that silence is divine construction time. When it feels like nothing is happening, something sacred is being built behind the curtain of your waiting. You may not see it, you may not sense it, but that doesn't mean it isn't happening. Think of it like seeds buried under the soil. From the outside, it looks dead, still, and forgotten. But underground, there's movement, there's transformation, and one day, that hidden process will push through the surface and astonish everyone who doubted it would grow. Many times in life, we rush to conclusions. We say, "God forgot me," when in truth, He's just organizing what's next. You see, if every prayer were answered instantly, our faith would